Hey everybody, it's about 7:11 on this Monday, the day before New Year's Eve. Monday, December 30th, 2013. I guess it's kind of appropriate that I do this, and I apologize for the noise in the background. I don't know what that is outside. Um, but again, I thought I'd kind of find this kind of appropriate to do. Talking about the year it has been in the Sonic comic books. I know, as I mentioned in a previous video, a lot of people are still waiting for issue 256. They're still waiting for issue 256 to arrive in the mailbox or even arrive at the comic stores. And it will. It's just that right now the holiday season takes top priority at the post offices. But to say it's been quite an interesting year. When it comes to the Sonic comic book. And we're talking universe as well as the main comic. It's been quite interesting. There's no doubt about it. Internally, from a business standpoint, behind the scenes, it's been very interesting as well. Sorry about that. I mean, you take a look at essentially a year that saw basically the most prolific story arc that Ian Flynn had ever done, the most prolific story arc that Ian Flynn had ever done, and basically a majority of that went to waste. And why? Because behind the scenes, basically, Archie Comics and Ken Penders couldn't come to any kind of an agreement. They couldn't come to any kind of an agreement of any kind. So that basically caused the story arc to really change about. It really did. I mean, when you look at how the subplot of endangered species went down, it kind of gives you an idea of exactly what happened. Again, it's been a very interesting year. There was some of the graphic novels and Sonic Select books and all that basically at times would indicate to you with its cover art or its stories inside that would indicate to you that things are going to be alright, and that certain characters like Julie Sue, Remington, Lala Lee, if you will, that they were all going to return. They were all going to come back. And unfortunately that did not happen. You take a look at Sonic Universe, and the fact that you had a one-issue adaptation of Sonic All-Star Racing's Transformed, and you have people kind of say, yeah, it was good, but it wasn't necessary. You have the Team Chaotix story arc that pretty much now throws out is thrown out and doesn't have any real meaning because of what's going on. Or does it? You see, it's been one of those years for the comic. I mean, when 247 went down, when 247 went down nine months ago, it's hard to believe. I mean, you're looking at December. So literally 247 happening back in March, if you will. Back in March of this year, March, April of this year. You know, it really is surprising, you know, to see where a majority of this year went, you know. But again, like I said, you take a look at endangered species, which ended in 246 and ran from basically between March, February, January, and December. It's like a year ago, this story had the potential to be something, even if it was just a small subplot, or it was going to be some kind of major plot device for the Mecha Sally World Tour 2 Death Egg Mark II arc. But instead it ended up getting thrown out and alternized, if you will, due to the behind the scenes situation between Ken Penders and Archie Comics. And it's just hard to believe that we went from there to where we are now. I mean, I'm sure if you would have asked Ian Flynn, hey, would you thought you would have gotten to this point, you know, so soon? Even if you would have asked Ian Flynn a year ago when he did the endangered species sub-arc, that a year later he'd actually be doing that a year or so later, the final issue in a 4-part soft retcon arc, if you will, called Countdown to Chaos, was going to happen. If you would have asked him that maybe a year ago, or maybe when he started working on endangered species, I don't think he would have. Honestly, I don't think Ian Flynn would have said, you know, would have said yes. I would have seen it coming, because he wouldn't have. Ian Flynn wouldn't have seen it coming. He basically would have just said no. I probably wouldn't have seen it coming. I probably didn't think we'd ever do that. But lo and behold, here we are. And, you know, and what a way to get here, huh? I mean, what endangered species was supposed to do in helping with this overall story arc wasn't, you know, sounded intriguing, sounded interesting. But then, like I said, the whole legal situation, and basically they resulted in saying, hey, let's use. Basically, it resulted in not only the story being alternized, but also resulted in Sally's restoration depending on the limb of a Krazood plant. A mechanical plant that takes over machines. And now, you don't even have to worry about that, because that's all thrown out the window thanks to Worlds Collide and its ending. And Worlds Collide. That's another one. That's another one. I mean, not saying that the idea wasn't good, the concept wasn't a good idea. It was. I just think the timing was wrong. I mean, yes, I can understand that you are doing it to coincide with the 20th anniversary of the Sonic comic book series. 20 years, that's unbelievable. As well as to coincide with the 25th anniversary of the overall Mega Man franchise. I can understand that. But I just think the timing was a little off. That's what I think it was. The timing was a little off, and it was basically mandated to take place at a time where it really wasn't necessary. I mean, again, the concept and the idea and everything was great. The overall idea, though, the overall positioning, not so great. If you know what I'm saying. I mean, if I was Capcom, Sega, and Archie, mostly Archie from what I understand, maybe even Capcom, I would have held off on this. I wouldn't have tried to say, hey, it's the summer, let's push this crossover in the middle, thus interrupting a current story arc in your 20-year, in a comic book that's in one of your comics that's celebrating 20 years, as well as possibly a story arc in your Mega Man series. You want to interrupt it just because you want to get this done. And again, to me, good idea, good concept, just bad timing. And it had potential. I mean, I read the issues. It had potential to really be good. I mean, honestly, I've always thought that what they could have really done to create a little bit more drama and give it a real good climax was to, and I'm always going to stick to this, ladies and gentlemen, was to basically have all of Sonic's friends that were mechanized, roboticized, if you will, roboticized, if you will. To have all his friends have some kind of added function that would allow them to combine into one big robot. So thus creating a climax to not only where Sonic would have to save his friends, but now he'd have to try to not only save them, but have to possibly face them as a giant, with them combined as a giant robot. So, again, that's some potential I thought Worlds Collide could have had it, but they never went with it. They never went for that direction, and I think it could have really worked out. And again, like I said, I know I sound like a broken record, but good concept. The timing of the release was just wrong. I mean, you don't release something in the middle of two ongoing story arcs that fans are invested in just so you could say, hey, let's do this crossover event for the summer. And overall, it's gotten kind of a mixed reaction. Some liked it, some didn't. Some felt, hey, it was great to see it happen, great to see the after effects that it's going to have on both comic book series. Well, others are like, what was the point? All it was just a marketing thing to get people to pay attention to the games. It's like, what was the point? It really didn't do anything. So... yeah, Worlds Collide, I thought was okay. I thought it was good for a crossover, but, as good as it was, the timing for its release to me was just bad. You could have done the same story arc, the same storyline for it and everything, but you could have held off a little longer. Now, some might say, well, they did it for this reason, and I can understand why they did it. I can understand why they did it for that reason. It's just there are certain reasons why you do something, and there are certain reasons why you don't do something. And again, you could have still had the same effect. You could have still had the same kind of retcon situation going on in the Sonic comic books and all that. but you could have waited a little longer until at least after the two main story arcs in both Sonic and Mega Man were done. You could have at least waited to that time frame. So, to me, it's just, I mean, again, good story arc, good crossover. Timing for its release, though, wasn't good. Really wasn't good. And again, like I said, some of the story arcs that came out throughout the year, especially in Universe. Team Chaotic's story arc was okay in the eyes of some. Was good, if not okay, in the eyes of a lot of people. It reunited Mighty with his sister Matilda. Gave us an idea originally of what was going to happen with Bunny because it gave us a silhouette of her at the end of the final issue of the Chaotic Saga. But again, just like Endangered Species, that got aided, if you will, due to the behind-the-scenes situation. Then you had, of course, you had Universe being part of the whole crossover. Then you had the Blaze issue, which some people have kind of been like, it was alright, but not really. And some people are just not liking how Blaze gets treated, and I can totally agree with that because Blaze is a freaking badass, if you will. Sorry about that. Blaze up there, as you can probably see. He's a freaking badass. So I can see where they're coming from. And I can see how they're like, yeah, it was okay, but really wasn't okay. And then, of course, you got the potential for what Shadow's Fall is going to be, the new Universe arc, and how it's going to really cap off the beginning of 2014. And then, speaking of story arcs, of course, after Worlds Collide, we get the Implage to At All Cost, which was back in March and in April, and of course that too really got a lot of people, because even before then, going into last year, a lot of fans pretty much were like, Ian, a lot of fans pretty much knew who the traitor that Silver was going to look for was going to end up being. It's like, Ian, you couldn't be more obvious. Now some did credit Ian by giving Silver a more understanding of, okay, this is a traitor that is not in control of their own actions. Is being unwilling. Is being an unwilling traitor and is not in control of their own actions. So, some people give him credit for doing that, and that is good. At least it kind of acknowledged that. But still, it was just so obvious. It was just so obvious. And I think that's what ticked a lot of fans off. And then, of course, with 247, you lead us right into, of course, right into Worlds Collide. And then you just basically take everything that cliffhanged at the end of 247 and just throw it all out for basically a soft retcon at the beginning of 252, which is a epilogue to the Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 saga, and then prologue to Countdown to Chaos and the soft retcon. And again, it's like, and that is one thing too. I mean, some fans are okay with it, okay with this whole retcon happening. It's just some fans are like, really? Seriously? You're basically throwing out everything that we had at the end of 247. You're just throwing that out and starting all over and starting here. Doesn't make sense. So even though Countdown to Chaos is supposed to end this week and into next week, there are some fans that, have that reaction of, really, this is what you're not going to give us a proper ending. You're just going to throw it all away, you know. And a lot of fans would look at that and be like, sheesh, what a way to end 2013, Archie. What a way to end 2013, Ian. You're just taking potentially what was your longest running story arc for the past 2 years, and you're just throwing it out. Now, on the flip side, though, there are some positives about this. We are getting people like Ben Bates coming out and giving us a behind-the-scenes look over at places like DeviantArt of how the whole Mecha Sally process came to be, and how, as a lot of people said, and even I said it, I think I was one of the first that said it, how this whole roboticized, mechanized deal was just going to be a reason to give her a redesigned look, give her clothes, if to fully clothe her finally, which apparently you can see up there. And the reaction to that by some fans that supported Ian and all that, thinking, nah, that wouldn't be the reason. He wouldn't really go that far, would he? He wouldn't do that. Yeah, he would, apparently. So that's on the positive. On the flip side, the positiveness is at least you're getting an idea of a 3-step idea by Ben Bates of how it was supposed to be. Also on the other flip side, you have the positiveness that Ian Flynn has announced that going into next year, and he's actually slowly started to show little sneak peeks and hints here and there on his website, on his message board, that Ian Flynn plans to bring out this free, if you will, this free. It's not a manuscript or anything. It's just basically a free, I guess you could say, journal or something. I'm not sure. This free online book, if you will, of ideas that he had originally had made, originally had pitched, originally had rejected, originally had been accepted, but it could not be used due to the behind-the-scenes situations for the Mecha Sally, World Tour II, Death Egg Mark II arc, Endangered Species, and so on. And that basically he had plans that were going to run from not up to just 250, but all the way up to 300. So that, and again, on the positive side, on the flip side, at least we get to kind of end the year on a high note, knowing that next year we're going to get a better idea of what was originally supposed to be in the story arc, but put into this huge story arc by Ian Flynn, and and maybe before the year's out, or maybe even this weekend, the first weekend of 2014, maybe we'll finally see the official design of how, and get a better idea of how they were going to go from Mecha Sally, weaponized Mecha Sally, to de-roboticized, redesigned Sally, if you will. So it was going to be quite. It's like I said. Like I said, the silver lining, the flip side of this is at least you have two people that have worked on the comics artistically, and most importantly, writing wise, if you will. At least they're giving us an idea of. At least they're willing to finally share with us how things were originally supposed to be and supposed to go. So, but you know, overall it's been a very interesting year, very up and down year for Archie, for the Sonic Archie, for the Sonic comic books. I will say that, very up and down year. Um, I all I could do, all I can do is, all we could do, as fans, is just hope and pray that whether you like them or not, whether you like Archie comics or not, whether you like Ian Flynn or not, um, and we all have our opinions of both of them. Let's not deny that. But hopefully, all we could do is pray and hope that they bounce back in 2014, and that they avoid all of this going into the 25th anniversary of the franchise in the next year or two. So again, hopefully they can bounce back heading into the 25th anniversary, which will take place in another year or two. But I know they're getting ready for that. I know I know they're working on something big for that. If they're still licensed to the book by then, which I think they still will be. I mean, because why would Ian Flynn say, "Okay, I'm going to give you I'm going to show you what ideas I had going into 300," knowing that 300 was only like 50 months away. You know what I'm saying? I mean, not 50 months, but 44 months away. So, hopefully, again, all we can do, hopefully they'll be able to bounce back. All we have to do is pray and hope they bounce back, make better decisions, creatively, maybe at least talk to Sega one-on-one and say, hey, look, we understand you want the comic to be a little bit like the games, but you also got to let us be a little bit more freelanced with it. You got to let us kind of make it more of its own individual, basically, hopefully they can just tell them, look, we understand you want the comic to be closely related to the games, to get that, but you also got to allow us to give it its own identity again, let it be its own thing. So hopefully they'll be so again, all you have to do is pray and hope they'll be able to bounce back and at least get someone at Sega to understand, that the comic's got to be its own identity. Yes, you can have the atmosphere and all that be very relatable to the games. You can make the characters look like they came from the games, but in the end you gotta let it have its own identity, and hopefully they'll be able to convince Sega of that this upcoming year and going into the 25th anniversary of the comic in the next year or two. And again, because I know Ian Flynn and those at Archie have something big planned out for the 25th anniversary in the next year or two. So, but again, it's been a very interesting year as far as the comic goes. As far as being a fan, I did finally, as a lot of you probably saw, I did finally live up to my word. I did open all the issues that I have not opened since this whole Mecha Sally World Tour 2 Death Egg Mark II thing started. Finally opened them, gave an overall review. You can check that out here on my channel. And again, it's been a very up and down, interesting year for the Sonic Archie comic books. So that's all I'm gonna say. Let me know what you guys think down below. And God bless. Take care. Comments are welcome.